Hi guys, it's Nicole, and today I am sharing a second project using the October 2021 Flavors of the Month kit. This is from the Scraproom. So I always like to leave this in real time so you guys can kind of get a better look at everything that comes in the kit. I'm starting off with the main kit. So this is the main section of this kit, and this is meant to be like a sample of a collection. So you get some parts of a collection that you can kind of play around with and see if it's something that you would like to maybe go back and get some of the other papers or other items from that line. Or like me, I'm usually pretty content with a smaller amount like this. So we've got 2 sheets of a chocolate brown cardstock, and then the 3 pattern papers that come in the kit are Fall Floral, Autumn Air, and Seasonal Squares. And then you get the full 12 by 12 sticker sheet. And then these 2 are from the pattern paper add-on. I did not use them. I just went ahead and pulled them in as I was kind of looking over everything. This little sticker sheet and the ephemera pieces are from the embellishment add-on. And then I've got my photo collages ready to go. Now, you guys should know by now that if Rochelle puts a full-size sticker sheet in a kit and there are large icons in it, odds are I'm probably going to find a way to make a scene on my layout. This kit, I was kind of torn because I've shown in my Creating with Collection series that I absolutely love like the little cut apart squares. And I also like die cut scenes, sticker scenes. I also like photo collages. So this layout kind of pulled in a lot of things that I tend to obsess about and kind of put them into one layout, and it's going to look a little chaotic. This section I took some yellow Distress Oxide ink and 1 cloud stencil. I didn't pull in all 3 that I have. I just took 1. And I'm just going to kind of make some messy clouds. My preferred method with doing like a scene is to find one of the pattern papers that's a little bit more muted and have that be my background. The 3 patterns that came in the main kit were very bold, very vibrant, really pretty, but a little bit busier than I would prefer to have for the back layer of a scene. So my solution to that was to just do some ink blended clouds directly onto that chocolate cardstock. And most of it's going to get covered up. I'm just kind of looking for something subtle and goes with the colors of the paper and kind of the theme of the layout, if that makes any sense. I kind of had it in my mind that I knew when I got to the editing process for this layout that I wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about creating scenes on a layout. I don't think that I'm necessarily like an expert at it or anything. I just thoroughly enjoy it, and there's some things that I tend to do in my personal scenes that I feel like maybe by describing them a little better could help if you've never done one. But again, we all know I'm not here for being super professional and like teacher. I'm here just showing my messy process kind of start to finish and how I get from a beautifully curated kit to a somewhat well-balanced fun layout at the end. The 2x2, well, these aren't really 2x2s because I think it's 8 squares make up a 12-inch section. So the little square cut aparts, I went through and I think I cut pretty much the whole paper up because there was specific colors that I was wanting to pull. I wanted some of the quote unquote patterns that didn't have an icon on it. So like the stripes and the mint plaid. And then I wanted things that were going to work with my theme. So things like the pumpkins in the wagon, the leaves, and then anything that wouldn't clash. So like I think there was things like coffee. I don't have it in front of me right now. Pretty much I just kind of selected the squares that I knew would work with my layout. I put my adhesive directly onto the cardstock. That works out a little bit better, in my opinion. And then I did decide at this point to ink the edges with a brown ink, mostly because when I cut apart a bunch of pieces like this and then try to kind of put them back together, they don't tend to line up very well, and inking the edges kind of blurs that a little bit. You don't really notice that the papers aren't 100% flush and lined up. So from that point on, I'm going to go ahead and ink the edges of pretty much all the pattern papers that I'm using, my photo collages. I pulled in, this is one of the other pattern papers, this darker green plaid. I really wish it was the same mint plaid from the squares, but without seeing the other papers from the line, I don't know if that was only on the squares. But I just needed a pattern paper to kind of fill in this little section on the side of my photo collages and above the squares, because I'm kind of keeping the squares as a separate element to the bottom. My photos are a separate element across the middle, and then my scene is going to take up the top third of everything, basically. At this point, I decided that I needed some kind of like delineation between those three areas. So I took some scraps of the square pattern paper, has the stripe pattern on the back. So I went ahead and cut a couple of full-length pieces and then a couple smaller pieces from the little scraps that I had left over, and made myself some border strips. Border strips to me is kind of a necessary part of having a scene, because I tend to like my scene to be separate than my photos, meaning not that it doesn't cross the line and they don't touch each other, but I want them to be two separate main elements on the page, if that makes sense. Almost like if the scene was printed on paper, that would just be like a 4-inch section of a pattern paper that just happened to have a scene on it at the top. That was probably explained terribly, but we're going to go with it. Here I have loosely laid out the larger elements that I'm for sure going to use. This is typically what I do, is I go through and I figure out which stickers am I kind of continuing to come back to and look at, because that tells me that those are the ones that I'm drawn to. With a scene this big, I wanted to make sure that I included room for my journaling. So typically I would do my journaling later. This time I'm doing it kind of towards the beginning of the process to make sure that it fits and it has its designated home. And then normally I would say kind of work your way backward to forward, meaning background to foreground in your layers in your scene. However, I tend to jump around because I'm figuring out what I like, what I don't like, what works, what doesn't work at the same time, and working background to foreground. I tend to look at things like the ephemera pieces with like the frame, like the scrolly frame edges, or like the ticket edges, tags. Those are the kinds of things that I like to push towards the background, because by the time you layer stuff on top of it, you're really just seeing the border with those pops of color. So in this instance, the one that I put behind the truck is actually upside down and has a bike and a phrase on it, but you can't see it once the truck is on there. You can see parts of it, you can see little areas peeking out from it, but you can't actually tell what it is. So in a sense, you're just seeing representations of a brown color and a red color. I did tuck a couple leaves to cover up like an actual letter that you could see, and you could tell that it was upside down. So that's where I kind of bounce around between parts of the scene. At this point, I went over to the left, and I'm kind of trying to come up with a similar plan as far as finding some things that I can push to the background and then layer my title on top of that. And I will typically put foam adhesive on the back of pieces that I want to be more prominent. So things like the wagon, all the pieces of the title, the truck, and the journaling strips. So that's almost like the most foreground layer. And then behind that is different stickers. Behind that is things like ephemera pieces. Behind that is the ink blended clouds. And I started out being like, okay, I'm going to stick to the main kit, but most of the time I tend to only get maybe one, sometimes two layouts in what I would say a fall event or a fall theme, because where I live, we don't have fall activities. We don't really have fall, but I love fall collections. So I knew that I wanted to use anything and everything that I was absolutely drawn to. And so I did pull the ephemera pieces and the smaller sticker sheet from the embellishment add-on because I wanted to include a bunch of stuff in there as well. And unfortunately, I could not find the file of me finishing everything up. I did pull in some tiny alphabet stickers to form the word into on my title. And I just kind of kept filling in with a bunch of different stickers. And I have extended the length of my photos at the end of the video so that you can really get kind of a sense of how I layered things. I am kind of kicking around the idea of maybe doing a series of just scenes, die cut scenes, sticker scenes, stamped scenes, that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if I should do it or not. So let me know down in the comments below if you like scenes, if you do scenes, if you're not sure, if you want more information, that kind of thing. And as always, I thank you for stopping by, spending some time with me and chatting with me in the comments, and I will catch you guys in a video again probably tomorrow.